just us trying to figure out what the hell to talk about as an outtake.
Oh my gosh, yes, that is true. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of The Cloud Whisperers. I'm David Broussard.
And I'm Brian Cheatham, number 36.
That's right.
That's good stuff.
Exactly, and it's great to have you back, Brian. What have you been up to lately?
So, I have to do a dad brag. I think everybody gets a dad brag now and then.
Yes.
My son had his final band performance. He's in 8th grade, and he plays the bassoon, like I've told you in the past. And it's not really an instrument that's recognized. You know,
Most people probably don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, don't even know what it looks like, and it's the same in band too. It's just kind of okay. It's back there in the section with all the other,
and you don't march
with the tubas, and you can't march with it. Yeah, you cannot march with it.
Does he do cymbals then when they march, or do they not march yet?
So he can choose what he wants to do. Usually they will play like flute or something like that. So he's starting to march and do that whole thing. And he's like, I'm not as good as everybody else on the flute. It's like, well, you haven't been playing the flute, so you will be playing the flute more. But anyways, the final performance, and his band director actually retired. It was his retirement kind of a concert or whatever you want to call it. He had been at the school for 23 years. And
wow. They
do awards that last concert. A lot of it's just like a director type awards or whatever, but there's the kind of the cream of the crop of award that's most outstanding, or outstanding male, outstanding female. And my son actually got outstanding male for 8th grade. And not only did he get outstanding male, but his partner that plays bassoon as well got outstanding female. So it was just really cool to see that and see the bassoon, that instrument, get that recognition, and those two standing up there. Yeah, and then the next day they had kind of the academic ceremony or whatever, and I don't know how he did this because I never did, but he got all A's all the way through middle school. He's in UIL.
That's awesome.
Can't say enough good things about him. So I had to do a dad brag this time around, man.
Yep.
Very, very proud of him and all that. And I guess I had something to do with some of that. I think my wife had more to do with it than I did because she got better grades than I did. I contribute on the creative side of things, and he gets the math brain from me. So,
well, I've heard that, being involved in band, and especially with certain types of instruments that are more unusual, like woodwinds, and my daughter played violin, that those things tended to be indicators of good academic success as well, because they're things that require dedication and practice and commitment that translates very easily over into academics as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like stepping stones, right? You're always building. Mm-hmm. You're always challenging yourself. I'm very, very happy to say that, he's involved in that, and will be throughout high school as well. So he's going into high school, already on the marching band and all that. So that's my dad brag.
That's
so
awesome.
David, I have to ask you the same question. What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I have been dealing with difficult end of the school year. And I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you, but I suffer from depression. I have for many years. I take antidepressants and I do counseling because that mental health is important. I don't mind talking about it. I think it's if people hear about it and they can be helped by my story, then that's great as well.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
One of the things that I had done for years is I had played this game called World of Tanks, and I eventually got fed up with it and stopped playing it. And I'd been a few years now just trying to find something to do when I need to relieve some stress that is just for me and not for anybody else and everything like that. And I'd been talking with my counselor about this, and I finally decided to get back into playing Minecraft. Now, my kids started playing it a long time ago. I got into playing it, and I really enjoy it because it lets me have control over my own environment. There's a little bit of, I play in survival mode, so I don't just get everything that I want. I have to earn it. There's some reward. There's a little bit of risk. I don't play on like super deadly mode. I just, play the game and try to have fun. Middle of the road, and so it's nice. I've been doing a little bit of that lately, where I just spend some time digging and laying out. And what I really try to do is I try to build I try to build things, right? I like to build big castles. And I like to build houses and cathedrals. And I built this one cathedral one time that had like different stained glass windows and different sections. And there was actually a whole layout to making it have different color glass in different places and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that I've been doing lately. It's been a lot of fun, actually. It's been good at controlling my stress levels. I think we all have to have something like that we can do in our lives to make us reasonably happy.
Yeah, mental health is very important, man. Very important. I'm glad you're doing that for yourself and playing Minecraft with my son or whatever. It's funny. There were times or whatever where I would play on my own too, and it does have a kind of a relaxing effect, especially when you're creating stuff. I'm big like that too. So that's good for you, man. I'm happy that you're doing that for yourself.
It's been a lot of fun. One point I bought a Realm server, which Microsoft sells for like $7 a month or something like that. And you can load 5 games into it. And what's cool about the Realm server, and I may have to get mine reinstated again, is you can join it from any platform. So I can play on the computer, or I can play on my phone in Android, or my son can play an iOS on his phone or from his computer, or my wife can play from the Xbox because she doesn't like anything but the Xbox controller. And it's really funny. I have this grand design of getting the whole family together and us doing something together. And as soon as you get all 4 of us into a single game, everybody goes their own direction and does their own thing all by themselves. And I'm just like, I thought we were trying to do something together, right? Yeah. Everybody's off doing their own thing, and we're in different rooms. So you can't hear anybody talking. And I'm just like, this is not what I wanted out of playing Minecraft with the family. But nonetheless,
if you played like that's all. What do they call that? Where everybody's trying to kill each other?
Oh yes, yeah, free for all or something like that.
Free for all.
Yeah,
free for all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's awesome. So, Brian, I thought today, as we segue into our topic for the day, it has been a while. I was looking back at our tracks out on SoundCloud, where you can go and find us and listen to us. And I realized it has been a long time since we last talked about Microsoft Viva. In fact, according to the tracks, the last time we talked about Microsoft Viva was episode 27, which happened to be posted about 2 years ago. So we have not revisited this topic recently. And I figured it might be a good idea because Viva's not the same offering that Microsoft had a couple of years ago. There's a lot of really new stuff that Microsoft has added, and there's new stuff that's going to be coming very soon. So I thought it might be a good idea for us to at least, dig into one or more of some of the cool things that live inside of Microsoft Viva. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great. I'm trying to figure out where to place this in small and medium business. And a lot of times I have business owners saying, how do I turn this stuff off? And I'm like, I don't know if you want to turn off like the Daily Digest and things like that, because there's some valuable information in there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion just so I can kind of understand how it fits the small business market as well.
Well, and a lot of this stuff is kind of designed more for the enterprise space.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
That's always going to be true. But let's go over really quickly and kind of level set Microsoft Viva again. So with Microsoft Viva, you have Viva Connections and Viva Engage. And I group those two together because there is only the free version of them. There isn't a premium version. Okay. Viva Connections is really about how you take your intranet and turn it into a more interactive modern intranet. It lets you surface it inside of Teams. Okay, that's kind of cool. We spend a lot of time in Teams. I don't have to go someplace else. But what it really is designed to do is to allow you to build interactive components called ACES cards, or adaptive card extension services. Okay, and these are essentially little SharePoint web parts, or really just modern web components, okay? Because they can be written pretty much anything, that are wrapped together inside of this framework, and then they can be deployed inside of your organization, and then they can be audience targeted at your users. Yeah. So you think about that and you go, well, okay, so what does that mean? Well, what it means is you think about this for a second, and is it I can write a piece of code that does something like, say, shows you your pay stub. So your pay stub exists on a back-end system, and normally you'd have to go to that page, log in with your credentials, and then view your pay stub, maybe download a PDF, right? Well, what you can do with Viva Connections and ACES cards is I can write a little application that takes your identity, passes that to the back-end system for your pay stub, gets that back-end that pay stub, hands it back, and then renders it to you in a responsive manner. So that's the other big key. I might be sitting at a desktop browsing in Edge, right? Of course, so I'd always be using Edge, right? I'm a Microsoft guy. Or I might be on my Surface Duo, right? Using Edge, because I'm a Microsoft guy using a Microsoft phone, or whatever. But I could be on a mobile device, and it's going to, inside of Teams, it's going to render that page for me in the form factor that makes sense for the device I'm on. Tablet, multi-monitor display, big monitor, small monitor, all of that being responsive. And what's great about it is I don't have to have a VPN. I don't have to load any extra software. I don't even have to log in again, because on the back end, we're taking care of all of that with the framework, the identity, and the code we're writing on the back end. That's really powerful. And so even small businesses, you could think of it as a time card system, right? Or you could do time card entries. You could think of it as a way to surface documents that you want people to be able to see. All of that can be done with those ACES cards. Now, it does require some actual development. Visual Studio, C# code, deploying this app to a web server. But that stuff's becoming easier and easier as well. A long time ago, we had talked to David Warner and Hugo Bernier about the Patterns and Practices group. And those guys had told, they still run that program, even though they both work for Microsoft now. And that Patterns and Practices community has done amazing things to where you now have add-ins for things like Visual Studio Code, where it will build a Teams application for you, right? It does all the framework building for you, and now you just focus on writing the code to handle what it is you want to get done.
Yeah, what you want to see. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the other one of that, by the way, the other free one is Viva Engage, which is what it's designed to do is build communities. And so what it's doing behind the scenes is it's surfacing your Yammer communities inside Teams, right? But that's a pretty powerful aspect as well.
I see even in the, what comes with 365, and when it says Microsoft Viva in 365, and it mentions those two things. And obviously not all of the features are available there.
Well,
but it does mention
with connections,
those two things.
With Connections and Engage, that's all the features you get. Okay.
Yeah.
Now with Insights and Learning, those have got a free tier and a premium tier. So you had mentioned people wanting to turn off that daily digest email, right? Yep. Well, that daily digest email is coming from Viva Insights. And what it's telling you is what's on your schedule for today, but it also is going to give you guided information about how you work. Because if you think about what's happening in Microsoft 365, it knows everything that we're doing, right? It knows every email we send, every IM we send, every file we look at. And it knows if you joined the meeting on time or you joined it late, if you had your video on or didn't. All of that stuff is being tracked. It's very Big Brother-ish, right, after a fashion. But what Microsoft does is they look at that information, and with the free version of Insights, they try to give you coaching on how to be a better and more productive worker inside your environment. So it can tell you things like, you've got too many meetings, you don't have enough focus time, you're working after hours and on weekends, right? That kind of feedback that comes back to you. Are you exhibiting best practices in meetings? And there's a whole list of what those best practices are. And giving you that information enables you to look at how you're working and make some personal level changes, right? Now, that's the free version. The premium version adds a lot more functionality, and we'll have to talk about that another time. We'll have to, obviously we'll have to catch back up on Viva and some of the new stuff. Yeah. And the last one was Viva Learning, right? Viva Learning once again, runs inside of Teams. And what it's designed to do is to enable you get access to a whole bunch of free Microsoft training. So Microsoft Learn and MS Learn, all of that content is available to you. You get access to, I think it's the top 100 LinkedIn Learning courses for free as well. Okay. But what's neat about it is you got a search interface where you can find training on various topics. And if you're willing to put some work into it from an administrative side behind the scenes, you're actually able to create your own training using things like the learning pathways template from the lookbook. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is it learning pathways? Yeah. Okay.
Well, learning pathways gives you a web-based learning toolkit, right? That Microsoft keeps updated, but you can create your own training inside of learning pathways as well. That all lives inside of SharePoint. So you can build a web page and you can put text on it and you can embed graphics and embed videos and then put those together into a learning path or a course, right? And so you've got a little, I won't really call it an LMS. Maybe it's like an LLMS or a VLLMS, a very light LMS, right? But it does give you a way for you to give your employees a way to get training that you've created. Now, what Viva Learning does is it gives you a way to make all of that searchable, and then the individual user can look for, you could type in like Microsoft Teams, and it'll come back with all these different courses on Microsoft Teams. And if you've got your stuff built in SharePoint, you can surface it inside of Viva Learning, and your internal custom course catalogs, right, can actually be surfaced. And then what you can do is you can create playlists of, hey, take these 5 courses and you'll know about X. And then that can be shared with people inside of Teams or even set up as a tab inside of a Microsoft Teams channel. And that provides people with the ability to actually, share some training and socialize that training inside their organization. So it's not just you sending out an email saying, everybody go take this training. No, instead, I could sit there and send a course directly to you and say, Brian, if you want to learn about Viva, take these training classes in this. I've curated this list of courses for you to take, and now I'm sharing it with you, which is pretty cool. Right?
That's really cool stuff. Yeah.
Now that's the free version, right? There is a premium version of Viva Learning as well. And what it adds is the ability for you to integrate with an existing LMS system. So let's say you already own an LMS, right? Then what you can do is you can actually take those courses from that LMS, you can integrate it with Viva Learning, and people can now, when they're doing a search, not only will they find stuff in MS Learn and Microsoft Learn and LinkedIn Learning and SharePoint, they can also find stuff inside of your custom-built LMS as well.
That's spectacular.
Yeah.
No, because I just building those curriculums and everything. I remember back in the day when I was actually working for Quest Software, we had to build these curriculums, and taking and getting the content that you build once you decide what your curriculum is and uploading it to the LMS and publishing it in the LMS or whatever, that is a chore. It is absolutely a huge chore. And
it is.
We had special people on the team, special people. Mm-hmm. We had special people on the team, that was what they were dedicated for. They were dedicated to taking the content that we created and publishing it on the LMS. So it sounds like this kind of provides that bridge, to get there maybe a little bit quicker, which is really cool stuff. And I love the learning pathways. I use that all the time. The lookbook, it's so easy for me to go in and stand up an intranet page for a customer, a smaller business customer that doesn't really understand that concept. But now that you're explaining some of these Viva components to me, I'm starting to see other use cases, come about, and I mean, I just see these smaller cards or these adaptive cards, popping up within Teams channels and everything and stuff like that. Very cool stuff, very customizable, it seems, and very, very centered around the whole concept of self-service and
Yep.
those sort of things, which is huge. And I think people need to understand that self-service is here. And
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna get more selfie, right? It's gonna get more selfie. You're going to see those technologies and everything develop. And if you really think about where Microsoft started with 365, everything was based on productivity, right? And it was based on self-service. Comes from the information worker type of mentality, right, that we used to have in SharePoint. And you know a lot more about that than I do. But security and all these other things was an afterthought. But one thing that Microsoft really hasn't changed is that productivity side of it. They are focused on, that's where their development is going. So for you people out there that are still sending emails back and forth about that one process or whatever, you're going to have to eventually change if you continue to use Microsoft products. So I just want to get on my soapbox real quick and say that. But a lot of this stuff is, if you think about it, is designed that way. It's moving in that direction of productivity and self-service.
Very much
Very
so.
cool stuff.
Very much so.
Very, very cool stuff.
And what we'll do is in future episodes, we'll go back and talk about Viva Amplify, which is coming out pretty soon, which is going to let you build communications campaigns internally and track who's actually getting your communications and what channel they're getting it from. And we can talk about Viva Goals, which lets you build multi-level goals inside your organization to understand what people are working on and how that fits into the grand scheme of things for your organization. And then one of my favorite ones is Viva Topics, right? Because it lets you
Viva
build
Topics.
that knowledge base. These are all fascinating things, and we'll talk about them. We'll talk about them in a future episode. Otherwise, we could go on for an hour and a half, and I think everybody's got better things to do than listen to us blabber on for that long. But we'll see how that goes.
And then just real quick just so I understand, and maybe by asking the question, somebody else will learn something too. So the Viva Suite can be added on, any of these pieces can be added on to what you have, right?
Yeah.
So looking at the Viva's,
you can buy most of these things as a standalone license. So Insights, Learning, Topics, it was like $4 a user a month is what the base price is, the base list price, right? But Microsoft was also selling, and that'd be $12, right? But Microsoft was also selling what they call the Viva Suite license. Okay. And I think it's still $9 a user a month. So you're getting discount of $1 for each one. But it also includes all of the pieces of the Viva Suite. Okay. Now, there are some new things that Microsoft is coming out with, and the Viva Suite can come with or without Glint. I can't remember what it was that Glint does off the top of my head, and I can't remember off the top of my head. And there is, I think Glint might be the one that does doing the pulse surveys, but that's one of the ones that Microsoft has got out there as well, where you can actually start asking people what they think about the company, right? And it's a great way of getting employee feedback and understanding what's actually going on inside of there. But Goals and Amplify are going to be ones that are going to be included with the Viva Suite. Glint is an add-on package. And all of that stuff is available. Now, like I said, you get a free version of with your E3, E5 license, okay? But you're going to get more when you're willing to spend a little bit of money for it.
Got it. Makes sense. And then we have Copilot and all that coming too. So who knows where AI is going to plug into all this.
I had just seen an advertisement or a notification from Microsoft earlier this month that said that they are moving from their 20-person preview of Copilot to a 600-person paid preview of Copilot. And it's invitation only. So if you're one of the lucky 600 companies, you're going to start using Copilot, and Microsoft is going to be, asking you, was it better 1 or 2?
Yeah.
2 or 3, kind of thing.
Like when you're at the eye doctor.
Exactly.
1 or 2?
Exactly.
2 or 3. You and I know what that means.
Well, yeah, I'm wearing, I'm wearing glasses again. I got my laser surgery, and, eventually I got older and I have to start wearing glasses again, which is just not much fun.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, we have come to the end of another episode, and you know what that means? It's time for one last thing.
One last thing, one last exciting thing.
And, it's our chance to talk about something that's a little lighter, maybe involves some tech, but is often cultural in nature. And Brian, you mentioned something to me earlier that sounded absolutely fascinating. So what is it that you're going to be doing pretty soon here?
So I've been a Matchbox 20 fan for a long time. Funny enough, whenever I first started with music, learning guitar and all that, I was learning all of those Matchbox songs. I mean, that was around the time that I first started playing guitar. So a lot of the songs that you mentioned, Push and
3 a.m.
the 3 a.m. and all those, those are the ones that I learned on guitar. And
back to Good and Real
Back
World.
to Good.
And,
I'm a Matchbox 20 jukebox man. That's what I tell everybody when I have my guitar with me. They're like, "What do you want to?" They ask me, what can you play? It's like, I can play pretty much any Matchbox song you want. So Matchbox has a new album coming out. Matchbox 20 has the band, right? Not Rob Thomas by himself solo, but Matchbox 20, the band, has a new album coming out in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Where the Light Goes. They've already released one song. It's called Wild Dogs Running in a Slow Dream. It's a very catchy
name.
It's a very upbeat, catchy song. And they just did a really good job with the recording of it and all that. They got some howling type stuff going on there. It just go out and listen to the song and trust me that it's good. And I don't have any doubt that the new album is going to be good start to finish again, like most of the other albums have been. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, where their early albums, especially their debut album, which was Yourself or Someone Like You, you could listen to that from start to finish.
Oh, yeah.
And we probably all know, whenever you say Matchbox 20, you probably know Push was on that album, Back to Good, like we said, Real World. There's a bunch of really just good songs on it. You can listen to it from start to finish. But so we are going to a concert in Houston at the end of June, and we booked that concert back when it was still COVID. So it was back in back in July of 2021. So we still have tickets to this show. We're not paying anything extra.
Oh, wow.
And Matchbox is basically, this is what you would call a reschedule, but almost 2 years later.
Wow. So you're going to the Cynthia Woods Pavilion up in the Woodlands?
Oh, yeah. Woodlands. One of my favorite venues here in Texas. I just love that venue.
I'm not sure about outdoors in Texas in June. Right.
Yeah. Well,
that I'm always like, give me air conditioning. But but no, the Cynthia Mitchell Woods Pavilion is actually a really beautiful. It is a beautiful place to go hear a concert, and the acoustics are nice for an open air theater. I mean, it's amazing how good the acoustics are when there's no roof, right, to bounce sound back at you and stuff like that.
Well, and it's kind of natural too, the way that they built, the amphitheater and all that is earth, so it does have a natural, acoustic type of effect, so it lends to that very well. And yeah, it'll be hot, but that's what they have foamy beer for, Dave.
Well, this is true. This is true. Yeah. Yeah. And shorts and T-shirts, and you can live with that stuff. But I do have one last question on that, though. So I've listened to like Rob Thomas music. Okay. And every time I hear it, I'm thinking like, well, how is this not Matchbox 20? I mean, it's him. It sounds very similar. Obviously his vocal stylings are kind of somewhat unique, Rob Thomas's, but even the music and the lyrical style and stuff like that is still so similar to Matchbox 20. Why the heck is there a Rob Thomas discography and a Matchbox 20 discography?
At some point in a musician's career, right, they're writing with the band and you've got 4 or 5 personalities that have huge egos and all of that. And sometimes the writing process can be very daunting because you got people that are clashing and just colliding and all of that. And when you're on the road together and you're doing all those things, I'm talking like I've actually been on the road or something like that. I think I've read a lot of this stuff, but I have been in cover bands before or whatever, and even in the cover bands that I've been in, there's been those disagreements that you have. So I think people do solo albums just so they can kind of go out and spin it the way they want to spin it. And what's very interesting about Rob Thomas is one of his first spin it like he wants to spin it type of things was when Carlos Santana asked him to join in on the song that they have together.
Oh, that's a great song too.
Yeah. So he got a lot of publicity and that kind of made the band jealous, so that caused more friction. But if you actually count up all the albums, people think Matchbox only has Matchbox 20, the band. So that's pretty much the same 3 or 4 guys. It's really 4 guys that are still in the same ones from the album, the very first album. There's 5 albums, okay? There's also a compilation album. So there's actually 6 Matchbox albums. And Rob Thomas in his solo career has a few singles that he released or whatever, but he actually has 5 full-length albums too, his solo career. So the guy's just a songwriting machine. Some of my favorite songs that are by Rob Thomas, and a lot of his influence and everything came from the same influences that I had back in the 80s and whatnot. But he has it's a kind of a disturbing and a unique story. If anybody's interested, just go look up his story, where he came from and all that. You can actually find a guy that did an interview on YouTube, and just some of the stuff that he was talking about with his mother. 3 a.m., that song is actually about his mother. A lot of the lyrical content and everything else that you hear in that is about him taking care of his mother and, her being high or whatever, drunk at 3 a.m. That's what that song's about. So I encourage everyone to go out and look up that story and go out and check out the album too. Just check out the new song. Yeah. We're very excited to be able to go to a concert. My wife and I haven't been to a concert in years. Actually, I think, it's been 2 years, because that would have been the concert that we were going to go to. But because of COVID, it got canceled and they rescheduled it. And man, we haven't paid a cent. We haven't paid anything other than our hotel room when we go to Houston. So we're very happy and blessed to have that opportunity to go see them again.
That sounds wonderful. I know I like Matchbox 20. I like Rob Thomas. I'm not that deep of a fan of them and stuff like that, but I'll definitely check out that story about that. And I want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of The Cloud Whisperers. And I really want you guys to go out to iTunes, to Spotify, to Google Play, to SoundCloud, subscribe, give us some feedback. If you've enjoyed the podcast, if you've learned something from the podcast, please subscribe and feel free to reach out to us and let us know how we're doing. So other than that, Brian, until next time, be talking to you later. Until next time, take care.
Thank you again. Bye.
All right.